The morning haze clung to Camp Valor, wrapping the sprawling training grounds in a damp chill that did little to thaw the biting cold of whispered doubts and biting jeers. Private Emily Dawson stood at the back of the formation, her petite frame almost swallowed by the oversized fatigues she wore, sleeves rolled up to reveal surprisingly toned arms that betrayed the delicate appearance she projected. Around her, the cacophony of grunts and barking orders filled the air, punctuated by the sharp crack of boots striking the dirt as soldiers pushed their bodies to breaking point. Sergeant Blake Turner paced in front of the group, his voice a sharp whip slicing through the morning fog. "Come on, Dawson. You call that a push-up? You're lucky you don't snap in half," he sneered, eyes narrowing as they locked onto her. "This isn't a playground for toddlers. If you want to survive in the field, you better toughen up, or you'll be dead weight dragging the rest of us down." Emily's jaw clenched, but she said nothing. The sting of his words was nothing new, it had been a constant companion since she'd arrived at Camp Valor 6 months ago. The other soldiers snickered amongst themselves, throwing sideways glances at her small stature as if to confirm their own superiority. Her diminutive size was an open invitation for mockery, a convenient scapegoat for every faltering step she took during drills. "Let's see if you can even keep up with the obstacle course today," Turner barked, signaling the start of the grueling test. Soldiers surged forward, muscles taut and breaths ragged. Emily's legs pumped furiously, her heart pounding against her ribs as she navigated the course. Every hurdle, every crawl through mud and under barbed wire, was a battle against the expectation that she would fail. Behind her, a chorus of snide remarks trailed like shadows. "Need a hand, Dawson. Or maybe a booster seat," one soldier jeered, laughter bubbling up from the group. Another added, "Maybe stick to paperwork, Tiny. Leave the heavy lifting to the real men." Emily swallowed the lump rising in her throat, refusing to let their words break her resolve. She had learned early on that silence was her armor in the face of cruelty. Her fingers curled into fists as she climbed the final wall, muscles trembling from exertion but her spirit unyielding. Minutes later, the formation regrouped, sweat pouring down brows and uniforms stained with dirt. Sergeant Turner's gaze swept over the exhausted soldiers, landing squarely on Emily. "You call that effort? Pathetic. If you can't keep up, I'll find someone who can." As the soldiers dispersed to catch their breath, Emily lingered, her eyes fixed on the massive tank parked near the edge of the training field. The armored behemoth gleamed under the weak sunlight, a symbol of raw power and unforgiving strength. It was the kind of machine she'd always been fascinated by, a challenge that matched her secret ambitions. Suddenly, a sharp clang echoed from the tank's vicinity. A collective hush fell over the camp as the heavy vehicle jolted violently, then ground to an unnatural halt. Sergeant Turner, who had been inspecting the engine alongside the mechanics, stumbled backward, a grimace contorting his face. "Damn it!" Turner growled, his foot caught beneath the tank as it shifted unexpectedly. Panic flickered across his eyes as the massive weight pinned him in place. "Get it off me. Now." The soldiers froze, uncertainty rippling through the ranks. The sheer enormity of the tank made the thought of lifting it unthinkable, and hesitation rippled through the group. Whispers turned into murmurs of disbelief. "No way, who could possibly?" Emily's gaze sharpened. The usual fear that had gripped her chest was replaced by a steady resolve. She stepped forward, her voice clear and unwavering. "I'll help." Heads turned, disbelief written across faces. Sergeant Turner's eyes narrowed as he looked at her. "You. Don't be ridiculous, Dawson. Step aside." But Emily ignored him, moving toward the tank with deliberate purpose. Her hands found the rough metal, and she planted her feet firmly into the dirt, drawing on a well of strength few had seen. The camp watched in stunned silence as she braced herself beneath the vehicle's edge. "Can't be done," someone muttered, but Emily's focus did not waver. She inhaled deeply, muscles coiling like springs before she heaved upward. The tank shifted imperceptibly, just enough to loosen Turner's trapped foot. With a grunt that echoed determination, Emily pushed again, every fiber of her being channeling the impossible. Slowly, inch by inch, the tank lifted just enough for Turner to wrench his foot free. He scrambled out, gasping for air, staring at Emily with a mixture of shock and newfound respect. The soldiers erupted into murmurs of astonishment. Emily stood there, chest heaving, dirt-streaked and trembling, but unbroken. The fragile image they had painted of her was shattered in an instant by the raw power she had summoned. Sergeant Turner straightened, his usual scowl replaced by a grudging nod. "Dawson, that was impressive. Didn't think you had it in you." Emily met his gaze steadily. "I'm not just what you see on the surface," she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of months of silent determination. Around her, the ridicule faltered, replaced by a dawning recognition that strength came in unexpected forms. As the camp settled back into motion, whispers of Emily's feet rippled through the ranks. The small, fragile private who had been the butt of every joke had just defied their expectations, lifting not only a tank but the heavy burden of doubt that had shadowed her every step. And in that moment, beneath the cold morning sky, Emily Dawson began to reshape the story they thought they knew, one act of courage at a time. 6 months earlier, the air was thick with the scent of fresh paint and new beginnings as Emily Dawson stepped through the gates of Camp Valor for the first time. The sprawling military installation loomed large and unyielding, its towering watchtowers casting long shadows over the neatly lined barracks and training fields. Emily's small stature made her seem even more diminutive against the imposing backdrop, but her eyes burned with a quiet fire that belied her fragile appearance. From the outset, skepticism greeted her arrival. Drill instructors and fellow recruits alike exchanged doubtful glances, their whispers carrying through the barracks corridors. "She won't last a week," one muttered. "Too small, too weak," another scoffed. But Emily ignored the murmurs, focusing instead on the path she had chosen, a path she intended to carve out with relentless determination. Behind the scenes, far from the watchful eyes of her peers, Emily's days were consumed by rigorous private training sessions that pushed her body beyond perceived limits. Before dawn, she could be found in the dimly lit gym, muscles straining beneath the weight of barbells that seemed almost as large as she was. Each lift was a battle between mind and matter, the clanging of iron plates punctuating the silence as she pushed herself harder than anyone could imagine. Her hands, though small, became calloused from hours spent disassembling and reassembling mechanical parts in the vehicle maintenance bays. While others struggled with the complexities of armored vehicles, Emily immersed herself in technical manuals and engine schematics, her keen mind absorbing every detail. She studied the inner workings of tanks and transport vehicles with the precision of a seasoned mechanic, understanding their quirks and vulnerabilities in ways that even some seasoned soldiers overlooked. Lieutenant Harper was one of the few who noticed Emily's quiet dedication. During a routine inspection, he had paused beside her, observing as she meticulously adjusted the hydraulic system of a training tank. "You've got a knack for this," he remarked, his tone carrying a hint of surprise. "Most soldiers your age wouldn't dream of getting their hands this dirty." Emily glanced up, offering a faint smile. "I want to be more than just a soldier. I want to be someone they can count on, even when the impossible happens." Harper nodded thoughtfully, sensing the depth of her ambition. "Keep this up, Private. You might just prove them all wrong." The days blurred into weeks as Emily's secret regimen took shape. While her comrades engaged in group drills and team exercises, she carved out moments of solitude to refine her skills. Early mornings were spent running sprints and lifting weights, late nights were dedicated to poring over mechanical blueprints and practicing repairs under flickering fluorescent lights. She honed her body and mind in tandem, building a foundation that would support her unyielding spirit. But it wasn't just physical strength Emily cultivated. She learned to mask her efforts beneath a veneer of quiet compliance, avoiding the spotlight that might invite further ridicule. Her interactions with other soldiers were measured and sparse, careful not to reveal the storm of determination swirling beneath her calm exterior. In the mess hall, she ate alone, eyes scanning the room for signs of acceptance that rarely came. Her solitude was both a shield and a burden. The sting of isolation gnawed at her resolve, yet it also fueled her drive. Each whispered insult and dismissive glance became a silent challenge, a call to prove her worth beyond the confines of appearances. Lieutenant Harper remained a distant but steady presence, offering occasional words of encouragement that Emily clung to like lifelines. "Strength isn't always measured in muscle," he once said during a debrief. "Sometimes it's the mind that wins the day." Emily took those words to heart. She began to connect the dots between physical endurance and mechanical expertise, envisioning a role where both could be wielded as weapons in the chaos of battle. She imagined herself at the heart of armored operations, a strategist and a rescuer, capable of turning the tide when machines faltered and lives hung in the balance. Yet, the path was fraught with obstacles. During group exercises, Emily's size made her an easy target for derision. "Watch out, she might snap like a twig," a recruit sneered during a morning drill. "Better keep her away from the heavy gear," another added with a mocking grin. The words echoed in the barracks, but Emily refused to let them anchor her spirit. Instead, she doubled down on her secret training, pushing her limits until her muscles burned and her mind threatened to unravel. She learned to listen to the subtle hum of engines, to anticipate mechanical failures before they happened, and to execute repairs with swift precision under pressure. In these moments, she found a sense of control and purpose that transcended the derision surrounding her. Her nights were often restless, haunted by memories of past failures and the weight of expectations she struggled to meet. But somewhere deep within, a quiet voice whispered resilience, reminding her that every small victory was a step toward something greater. Emily's transformation was gradual, unseen by most but undeniable in its impact. The once fragile recruit was becoming a force to be reckoned with, a soldier who understood that true strength was forged in the crucible of perseverance and knowledge. As the weeks passed, subtle changes began to ripple through the camp. Lieutenant Harper started assigning her more complex tasks involving vehicle maintenance and armored tactics, trusting her judgment in ways that surprised even the senior instructors. Emily embraced these opportunities, her confidence growing with each successful mission simulation. Her secret world of training and study became a sanctuary, a place where she could prepare for the moment when she would no longer be underestimated. The image others held of her, a fragile, incapable girl, was a mask she wore to conceal the fierce determination simmering beneath the surface. In quiet moments, Emily dreamed of proving herself not just as another soldier, but as a vital cog in the machine of war. She envisioned the day when she would step forward, not as the object of pity or scorn, but as a leader whose strength was undeniable. Lieutenant Harper's parting words during one late-night training session echoed in her mind, "You've got the heart, Dawson. Now, show them the rest." And so, beneath the harsh fluorescent lights of the training bays and the unforgiving discipline of Camp Valor, Emily Dawson's journey continued, one marked by sweat, grit, and the unwavering belief that even the smallest among them could move mountains. The barracks echoed with muffled laughter and whispered jabs, a constant undertow beneath the clatter of boots and the sharp bark of orders. Emily Dawson moved through the narrow corridors like a shadow, her presence barely acknowledged except for the occasional snide remark tossed her way. The weight of their disdain pressed down on her, heavy and relentless, as if the very air conspired to remind her of her place. During drills and exercises, the divide between Emily and her fellow soldiers was stark and unyielding. In the mess hall, groups clustered together, their conversations laced with jokes at her expense. "Hey, Dawson, need a pillow for those push-ups," one soldier taunted, his grin wide and cruel. Another chimed in, maybe she should stick to filing reports instead of carrying rifles. The word stung, but Emily had learned to swallow the pain, masking it behind a stoic expression that rarely betrayed her inner turmoil. Her small frame was an easy target, an emblem of weakness in a world that prized strength and toughness above all else. The soldiers' whispers reinforced a narrative she fought daily to dismantle, one that painted her as a liability, a fragile link in the chain destined to break under pressure. Even Sergeant Turner, whose attitude had softened only slightly since the tank incident, found it difficult to shed his skepticism. "You're still not cut out for the front lines, Dawson," he'd say bluntly during training, his voice carrying the finality of a judge's gavel. "No matter how much you lift or how well you fix a machine, this is a battlefield. Size and grit matter." Emily's eyes would flash with quiet defiance, but she said nothing. Words were weapons they wielded freely, but she chose to respond with action, or at least, she tried. Yet, the gulf between perception and reality seemed insurmountable. She observed her comrades during tactical drills, noting their effortless coordination and physical prowess. Their confidence, buoyed by muscle and swagger, made her feel like an outsider looking in. When the instructors assigned heavy equipment or demanding physical tasks, Emily was often sidelined or given menial duties, reinforcing the notion that she was a burden rather than an asset. Behind her back, the whispers continued. "She's a ticking time bomb, one wrong move and she's done for. Why waste resources on someone who can't carry her own weight?" The doubts echoed through the barracks, shaking the fragile foundation of Emily's resolve. But beneath the surface, a different story unfolded. Away from prying eyes and cutting remarks, Emily honed her skills with relentless precision. She pored over technical manuals late into the night, committing every detail of armored vehicle mechanics to memory. She studied engine schematics, hydraulic systems, and the subtle signs that presaged mechanical failure. Her mind became a vault of knowledge that few others possessed, a secret arsenal she guarded fiercely. Physically, she pushed herself harder than anyone realized. Early mornings found her in the gym, lifting weights that strained her small frame, her muscles screaming in protest. She practiced endurance runs until her lungs burned, and she refined her techniques for rapid repairs under pressure. Each session was a solitary battle against the limitations others imposed on her. Lieutenant Harper remained one of the few who saw beyond the facade. During a particularly grueling simulation, he pulled her aside. "You've got the technical know-how and the determination," he said quietly. "But you need to believe in yourself as much as I do." Emily nodded, swallowing the knot of doubt that still lingered. "I'm trying," she whispered. Her attempts to bridge the chasm between perception and reality were met with mixed results. In group exercises, her input was often ignored or dismissed. When she suggested tactical adjustments based on her mechanical insights, senior soldiers shrugged it off. "Stick to your repairs, Dawson. Leave strategy to the combat guys." The isolation deepened, a cold wall that threatened to erode her spirit. Yet, with every slight, Emily's resolve hardened. She understood that acceptance would not be given freely, it had to be earned through unyielding perseverance. The gulf between Emily's outward appearance and her inner strength became a defining paradox. To her peers, she was fragile, a liability, a shadow in the ranks. To herself, she was a soldier forging her own path through sweat, pain, and relentless study. One afternoon during a tactical briefing, Emily's voice broke through the usual din. "The hydraulic system on the tanks tends to fail under extreme pressure," she explained, pointing to a schematic. "If we anticipate these failures, we can adjust our maneuvers to avoid immobilization." The room fell silent. Some soldiers exchanged skeptical glances, while others muttered under their breath. Sergeant Turner folded his arms, scrutinizing her. "Interesting theory, Dawson. But theory doesn't win battles." Emily met his gaze steadily. "Neither does ignorance." A flicker of surprise crossed Turner's face, quickly masked by a gruff nod. The moment passed, but it planted a seed of respect amid the prevailing doubt. Still, the path was lonely. Emily's nights were filled with restless thoughts, haunted by the divide between who she was and who they believed her to be. She wrestled with the frustration of invisibility, the sting of being underestimated at every turn. Yet, in those quiet hours, she reminded herself that strength was not always visible. It was forged in resilience, in the refusal to be defined by others' limitations. Each whispered insult was fuel for her fire, each sneer a challenge to rise above. The camp's hierarchy remained rigid, its acceptance slow and grudging. But Emily's determination was a quiet storm gathering momentum beneath the surface, ready to break through when the moment demanded. In the eyes of her comrades, she was still the fragile private, the underdog to be dismissed. But within her, a different truth took root, a truth that would soon be revealed in ways no one expected. The sun hung low over Camp Valor, casting long shadows across the training grounds as the armored vehicles rumbled into position for the live exercise. The air was thick with anticipation, soldiers shouting orders, engines humming, and the distant crackle of radio communications blending into the symphony of military precision. This was the moment they had prepared for, a simulated assault on hostile territory, complete with disabled tanks and mechanical failures designed to test their readiness under pressure. Emily Dawson stood near the edge of the field, her eyes scanning the lineup of vehicles. The massive tanks gleamed under the fading sunlight, their hulking frames a stark contrast to her slender figure. Around her, soldiers tightened their grips on weapons and adjusted their gear, faces set with determination, or in some cases, skepticism. Sergeant Turner barked commands, his voice cutting through the din. "Remember, the objective is to recover and repair disabled vehicles under fire. Speed and teamwork are key. Move out." The unit surged forward, engines roaring as the convoy rolled into the mock battlefield. The ground trembled beneath their feet, dust rising in swirling clouds. Emily kept pace, her heart pounding in rhythm with the pounding treads of the tanks. Suddenly, a sharp jolt shook the convoy. One of the lead tanks lurched violently before grinding to a halt, smoke curling from its engine compartment. The simulated explosion was deafening, sending a ripple of tension through the soldiers. "Tank 2 disabled," came the urgent call over the radios. "Enemy fire incoming, secure the area and prepare for repair." Chaos erupted as soldiers scrambled to their assigned positions. Emily's training kicked in effortlessly as she moved toward the disabled vehicle, assessing the damage with practiced eyes. The hydraulic system was compromised, the engine sputtering and unresponsive. Nearby, Sergeant Turner barked orders with renewed urgency. Secure the perimeter. Dawson, get to that tank and start diagnostics. Heads turned, surprise flickering across some faces at the command. Emily nodded sharply and approached the vehicle, tools in hand. Her fingers moved deftly over the panels, quickly identifying the root of the malfunction. Hydraulic pressure dropped below operational levels, she reported into her comms. I'm initiating emergency override to stabilize the system. Minutes stretched like hours as Emily worked, sweat beading on her brow despite the cooling evening air. The simulated enemy fire crackled in the distance, adding pressure to an already tense situation. Around her, soldiers guarded the perimeter, their eyes darting for threats that existed only in training scenarios, but the urgency was real. Suddenly, a loud creak echoed as the tank's massive turret shifted slightly, an ominous sign of structural stress. Sergeant Turner's voice cut through the radio static, tinged with alarm. The tank stabilizers are failing. If that thing tips, Turner's pinned under it. We need to act fast. A collective hush fell over the unit as the gravity of the moment sank in. The massive weight of the tank loomed, a beast threatening to crush one of their own. The soldiers exchanged anxious glances, the uncertainty palpable. Who's going to lift it? Someone muttered under their breath, the question hanging heavy in the air. The hesitation was immediate and overwhelming. Despite their training and physical prowess, the sheer size and weight of the armored vehicle daunted even the strongest among them. Fingers clenched weapons tighter, breaths hitched. The thought of pulling off a rescue seemed impossible. Emily's gaze sharpened. She knew the tank's weight, understood its mechanics, and most importantly, she knew her own capabilities. The hours spent in the gym, the late nights poring over manuals, all led to this moment. Without waiting for permission, she stepped forward. I'll do it, she said calmly, voice steady but resolute. Heads snapped toward her, disbelief flashing in their eyes. Sergeant Turner's expression hardened, disbelief mingling with concern. No, Dawson. That's suicide. But Emily was already moving, sliding beneath the tank's edge with practiced ease. Her hands found the cold metal, and she planted her feet firmly into the earth, grounding herself as she prepared to defy expectations once again. The soldiers fell into an uneasy silence, watching as the fragile-seeming private braced herself against the impossible. Emily inhaled deeply, summoning every ounce of strength and knowledge she had cultivated in secrecy. With a grunt that echoed determination, she heaved upward. The tank shifted imperceptibly, responding to the force of her will. Inch by inch, the massive vehicle lifted just enough to free Sergeant Turner's leg, trapped and pinned beneath its crushing weight. Time seemed to slow as Turner scrambled free, gasping for breath, eyes wide with shock. Around them, the soldiers erupted into murmurs of astonishment and disbelief. Sergeant Turner straightened, his usual scowl softened by grudging respect. Dawson, you did the impossible. Emily lowered the tank carefully, muscles trembling but unbroken. She met his gaze steadily. I'm not just what you see. The simulated enemy fire faded into the background as the unit rallied around her, the weight of doubt lifting with the tank. For once, the fragile private was the linchpin in a high-stakes rescue, her actions rewriting the narrative that had shadowed her since day one. As the convoy resumed its advance, the soldiers moved with renewed purpose, their cohesion strengthened by the unexpected display of courage and strength. Emily's heart swelled with quiet pride, knowing that the battle was far from over, but this victory, small and profound, had changed everything. The dust from the training ground had barely settled when the murmurs began to ripple through the ranks, a wave of disbelief turning into awe. The soldiers who had once dismissed Private Emily Dawson as fragile and incapable now found themselves grappling with a new reality. She had just lifted a tank. Not with brute force alone, but with a blend of strength, precision, and knowledge that none had anticipated. Emily stood just beyond the repaired tank, her chest heaving from exertion, muscles trembling under the strain of what she had just accomplished. Sweat clung to her brow, and dirt streaked her uniform, but her eyes held a steady fire, a quiet defiance that had simmered beneath the surface for months. Around her, the soldiers' expressions shifted from skepticism to astonishment, some even casting furtive glances of respect. Sergeant Blake Turner, once the loudest critic, approached slowly, his usual scowl softened by something new, recognition. Dawson, he began, his voice rough but sincere, I didn't think it was possible. You saved my life back there. Emily met his gaze without flinching. I've been training for this. I'm stronger than I look. The words hung in the air, heavy with truth. For years, Emily had been overshadowed by her size, dismissed as a liability. But now, the tank incident had rewritten that narrative. The fragility they assumed was a mask she wore, concealing a resilience forged in sweat and determination. Across the training field, other soldiers nodded, their murmurs growing louder. "She did what none of us could," one said quietly. "Maybe we've been wrong about her." Captain Luis Ramirez, overseeing the exercise, stepped forward, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp and calculating. He studied Emily briefly before speaking. "Private Dawson, your actions during this exercise exceeded expectations. You demonstrated not just physical strength but critical thinking under pressure." Emily straightened, pride swelling but tempered by humility. "Thank you, sir." Ramirez turned to Sergeant Turner. "Have you reconsidered your assessment?" Turner hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sir. Private Dawson proved her mettle today. We've underestimated her." The transformation in the unit's perception was palpable. Soldiers who had jeered moments before now offered tentative handshakes and nods of approval. The dynamic within the group began to shift, respect slowly replacing ridicule. Emily's confidence, once fragile and tentative, blossomed in the glow of recognition. The months of silent struggle, the endless hours of training in solitude, had culminated in this moment. She was no longer the weakling on the sidelines, she was a vital asset, a soldier who could face impossible odds and prevail. Later, as the unit gathered for debriefing, Emily found herself surrounded by peers eager to hear her insights. Questions flowed, technical details about the tank's failure, strategies for future rescues, suggestions for improving team coordination. For the first time, her voice carried weight, and her expertise was sought rather than dismissed. Lieutenant Harper caught her eye across the room, a rare smile breaking his usually serious demeanor. "You're ready for more," he said quietly. Emily nodded, feeling the truth in his words. The incident had not only changed how others saw her but how she saw herself. The journey ahead was still fraught with challenges, but now she faced it with a newfound sense of purpose and belonging. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the camp in a warm amber glow, Emily stood tall among her comrades. Her small frame no longer a symbol of weakness but a testament to strength born from perseverance. The battlefield awaited, and Emily Dawson was ready to meet it head-on. The sun was barely rising over the quiet town of Millbrook when Emily Dawson's mother first noticed the small, determined girl lifting more than just toys in the backyard. Emily, barely 10 years old, stood beneath the gnarled branches of the old oak tree, her hands gripping homemade weights fashioned from rusted metal scraps and worn-out bicycle parts. Her slender arms trembled with effort, but she refused to let go. Around her, the neighborhood kids played freely, their laughter a distant echo, but Emily's focus was unshakable. Growing up, Emily had always been smaller than the other children, frail in stature but fierce in spirit. At school, she was often dismissed as delicate and fragile, her classmates underestimating her abilities. "You're too tiny," they'd say, their eyes filled with doubt. But Emily refused to accept the limitations others imposed on her. Each whispered insult and sideways glance fueled a quiet fire within her, a determination to prove that strength was not measured by size alone. Her father, a mechanic by trade, became an unexpected mentor. When Emily wasn't at school, she spent hours in the garage, watching her father work on engines and machinery. The smell of oil and grease was a constant backdrop to her childhood, and she absorbed every lesson with wide-eyed fascination. Understanding how things work, her father would say, gives you power. Not just brute force. Emily's slender fingers learned the language of gears and pistons long before she could lift a heavy weight. By the time she was a teenager, she was adept at repairing bicycles, lawnmowers, and even the family's aging car. Her mechanical aptitude was impressive, but it was her relentless work ethic that set her apart. In the evenings, she combined her two passions, strength and mechanics, into a rigorous regimen. After school, she lifted weights in the makeshift gym her father had built in the garage, pushing her body beyond perceived limits. The clang of metal and the rhythmic thud of her footsteps on the running track became the soundtrack of her adolescence. Each drop of sweat was a testament to her refusal to be defined by her size. School wasn't easy. Teachers often overlooked her, and peers dismissed her ambitions as unrealistic. Yet Emily's resolve never wavered. She studied with a voracious appetite, excelling in science and math, subjects that complemented her mechanical interests. She dreamed of a future where she could combine her skills to make a difference, to be more than the underestimated girl who struggled to keep up. When the opportunity came to enlist, Emily saw it as the ultimate test, a chance to prove not only to others but to herself that she belonged in a world dominated by strength and toughness. The military's emphasis on physical prowess was daunting, but she embraced the challenge with open arms. Her childhood struggles had prepared her for the relentless training and skepticism she would face. She knew the path ahead would be tough, marked by doubt and isolation, but she was ready. The sacrifices were already etched into her story: early mornings, long nights, and countless moments of pushing past pain and exhaustion. As she stood on the training grounds of Camp Valor, the memories of Millbrook fueled her determination. The tiny girl who had lifted makeshift weights beneath the old oak tree was now a soldier, ready to face the impossible. Her understanding of machinery and her unwavering spirit had converged into a unique strength, one that defied expectations. Emily's journey was not just about physical power but the resilience cultivated through years of quiet struggle. In the stillness of the night, as the camp settled into a restless calm, Emily reflected on the sacrifices she had made, the friendships foregone, the comforts abandoned, and the countless hours spent in solitude. Each sacrifice was a stepping stone, a necessary toll on the road to proving herself worthy in a world that valued brute strength above all else. Her story was a testament to the power of perseverance, a reminder that true strength often lies hidden beneath a fragile exterior. Emily Dawson was no longer the underestimated girl from Millbrook. She was a soldier forged in the crucible of determination, ready to face whatever battles lay ahead. The atmosphere in the training hall was charged with a new energy the morning after the tank rescue. Word had spread quickly throughout Camp Valor, shifting the currents of opinion like a sudden gust in a stagnant room. Soldiers who had once dismissed Private Emily Dawson now regarded her with cautious respect, some even admiration. The fragile recruit was no longer invisible, her name was spoken in hushed tones, her actions dissected and praised. Sergeant Turner stood before the assembled unit, his tone altered from the usual gruff dismissal to something more measured, even grudgingly respectful. "Listen up," he commanded, eyes locking onto Emily as she stood at attention near the back. "What Dawson did yesterday, lifting that tank and saving my ass, showed guts and strength none of us expected. I'm not here to hand out compliments lightly, but she earned every ounce of respect." A ripple of murmurs passed through the crowd, some nodding, others exchanging glances that acknowledged the changing tide. Emily's heart beat steadily, not from pride but from the quiet satisfaction of having her efforts recognized. Captain Luis Ramirez entered the hall, his presence commanding immediate attention. He scanned the room before fixing his gaze on Emily. "Private Dawson," he began, voice clear and authoritative, "your performance during the exercise has not gone unnoticed by command. Your unique combination of technical expertise and physical capability makes you a valuable asset." Emily swallowed, steadying herself against the surge of emotions. "Thank you, sir," she replied, voice steady but humble. Ramirez continued, effective immediately, "You are being considered for advanced training roles and leadership positions within armored vehicle operations. This is an opportunity to expand your skills and contribute at a higher level." The announcement sent a ripple of surprise through the unit. Some faces lit with approval, others with skepticism. Emily felt the weight of expectation settling upon her shoulders, heavier than any physical burden she had ever borne. Sergeant Turner approached her after the briefing, his expression softer than usual. "You've come a long way, Dawson. I was wrong to doubt you. If you keep proving yourself like this, you'll be leading troops before long." Emily nodded, a flicker of a smile breaking through her usually reserved demeanor. "I won't let you down, Sergeant." In the days that followed, the dynamics within the unit shifted noticeably. Soldiers who had once mocked her now sought her counsel during vehicle maintenance and tactical discussions. Lieutenant Harper included her in strategy meetings, valuing her insights on armored vehicle vulnerabilities and repair protocols. Yet, the path was not without challenges. Some members of the unit remained skeptical of her rapid ascent, whispering doubts about her leadership potential. Emily faced these undercurrents with quiet determination, understanding that respect earned in battle had to be maintained through consistent performance. Her new responsibilities brought a whirlwind of training sessions, technical briefings, and leadership drills. Emily immersed herself in the material, eager to absorb every lesson and refine her command skills. The physical demands were intense, but they paled in comparison to the mental rigor of leading a team and making split-second decisions under pressure. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Emily stood alone on the training field, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The weight of her new role settled over her, a mixture of pride and apprehension. She knew the road ahead would test her resilience in ways she had yet to imagine. Her phone buzzed, a message from Lieutenant Harper, *, "You're ready for this. Don't doubt yourself." *, the simple words anchored her, a reminder that she was not alone in this journey. As the camp lights flickered on, casting long shadows across the grounds, Emily felt a surge of resolve. The transformation from underestimated recruit to respected leader was underway, but it was only the beginning. She was ready to face the trials ahead, to prove that strength was not defined by size but by heart, mind, and unwavering determination. And with each step, Emily Dawson was carving her place among the soldiers of Camp Valor, no longer the fragile girl they once dismissed, but a force to be reckoned with. The briefing room at Camp Valor hummed with a tense energy as Private Emily Dawson took her place at the head of the table, the weight of her new assignment pressing down on her slender shoulders. The room was filled with soldiers handpicked for a special unit focused on armored vehicle tactics and rescue operations, a responsibility that marked a significant turning point in Emily's military career. She surveyed the faces around her, some curious, some skeptical, others openly doubtful of her authority. Captain Luis Ramirez stood beside her, offering a nod of encouragement before stepping back to let her lead. Emily took a deep breath, steadying her nerves. She had earned this moment, but commanding a team skeptical of her capabilities was an entirely different challenge than any physical trial she had faced. "Thank you all for being here," Emily began, her voice clear and steady despite the undercurrents of tension. "Our mission is critical. We'll specialize in tactics for recovering disabled armored vehicles in hostile environments. It's a role that requires precision, coordination, and trust." A murmur rippled through the room as soldiers exchanged glances. Sergeant Mike Caldwell, a burly veteran with a reputation for blunt honesty, was the first to speak. "With all due respect, Private Dawson, leading a team like this isn't just about knowing the mechanics. It's about command experience. You're new to this." Emily met his gaze without hesitation. "I understand the challenges, Sergeant. I've trained extensively in both the technical and tactical aspects of armored vehicle operations. More importantly, I'm committed to earning your trust through action." Lieutenant Harper, seated quietly among the group, offered a subtle nod of support. "She's not just talk," he said. "Dawson's proven herself in the field." Despite the encouragement, the undercurrent of skepticism lingered. Emily knew earning their respect wouldn't come easy. The soldiers had seen her as the underdog for too long, and changing deeply ingrained perceptions required more than words. The initial training sessions were grueling. Emily pushed her team hard, knowing that their cohesion and effectiveness depended on rigorous preparation. She drilled them on rapid vehicle assessments, emergency repairs, and coordinated extraction maneuvers under simulated fire. Each exercise tested not only their skills but their ability to operate as a unified force. Tensions flared during one particularly intense simulation when Sergeant Caldwell openly challenged her decision to alter the extraction route mid-mission. "This isn't how we've always done it," he argued, arms crossed. "Why change a strategy that works?" Emily held her ground. "Because the conditions have changed. We need to adapt to minimize risk and maximize efficiency. Flexibility saves lives." The room fell silent as the soldiers absorbed her reasoning. Slowly, grudging acceptance replaced resistance. Over time, Caldwell became one of her staunchest allies, his respect earned through her unwavering commitment and strategic insight. Emily also navigated the delicate balance of leadership and camaraderie. She made an effort to know her team personally, recognizing their strengths, understanding their doubts, and addressing their concerns. Her small stature, once a point of ridicule, became a symbol of resilience and determination that inspired those around her. Lieutenant Harper provided steady guidance behind the scenes, offering tactical advice and helping Emily refine her leadership style. Under his mentorship, she grew more confident in delegating tasks and making swift decisions under pressure. The unit faced outside challenges as well. Rivalries simmered beneath the surface, with other teams questioning the legitimacy of their specialized role. Emily confronted these tensions head-on, emphasizing professionalism and the importance of their mission. Her composed demeanor and clear vision gradually quelled dissent and fostered a sense of pride within her unit. One evening, after a long day of training, Emily gathered her team around a makeshift campfire. The glow of the flames illuminated tired but determined faces. "We're not just here to follow orders," she said quietly. "We're here because we have a purpose, to save lives, to recover what others can't, and to be the difference between failure and success in the field." Her words resonated, forging bonds that transcended rank and reputation. The soldiers began to see her not as a fragile recruit but as a leader who embodied the grit and resolve they all aspired to. As the nights grew longer and the training more demanding, Emily's unit transformed from a group of skeptics into a cohesive team ready to face the uncertainties of combat and rescue operations. The road ahead was steep and fraught with challenges, but with each day, their trust in her, and in one another, solidified. Emily stood at the edge of the training ground one evening, watching her team execute a flawless extraction drill. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the armored vehicles glinting in fading light. A sense of quiet accomplishment settled over her. The journey from underestimated private to respected leader was far from over, but Emily Dawson was proving that true strength lay not in size or past doubts, but in perseverance, vision, and the courage to lead against all odds. The early morning chill clung to the air as Emily Dawson and her unit assembled at the staging area, the metallic scent of diesel and burnt rubber mingling with the faint hum of armored vehicles idling in readiness. Today's mission briefing was unlike any they had faced before, a critical operation involving the recovery of disabled tanks stranded deep within hostile territory. The stakes were high, the terrain unforgiving, and the enemy unpredictable. Emily stood at the forefront, her gaze steady as she addressed her team. The years of training, the battles fought against doubt and prejudice, had forged her into a leader they trusted. "We're entering a zone where communication is limited and support may be delayed," she began, voice calm yet resolute. "Our objective is to retrieve the disabled vehicles and ensure the safety of any stranded personnel. Coordination and trust are paramount." The soldiers around her nodded, the usual banter replaced by a focused silence. Sergeant Caldwell tapped his helmet. "We've drilled this scenario countless times. It's time to put theory into practice." Lieutenant Harper, observing from the command post, gave a curt nod of approval. The operation was a test not only of their skills but of the unity they had built over months of rigorous training and shared hardship. As the convoy rolled out, the landscape shifted from open plains to dense woodland, the canopy casting fragmented shadows over the rough terrain. The radio crackled intermittently with updates, the tension palpable as the team navigated narrow paths and steep inclines. Suddenly, a distress signal pierced through the static. One of the lead tanks had been immobilized by a concealed explosive device. The team halted, weapons raised, eyes scanning the surrounding underbrush for signs of enemy movement. The simulation was unforgiving, designed to mimic the chaos and uncertainty of real combat. Emily's mind raced through protocols as she coordinated the response. "Secure the perimeter," she ordered. "Caldwell, Harper, take teams to cover the extraction point. I'll begin diagnostics on the disabled tank." Working swiftly, Emily assessed the damage, a compromised engine and damaged hydraulics. Sweat beaded on her brow as she relayed repair strategies, directing her team with precision. The clock was ticking, every second a potential risk. As the soldiers executed their roles, trust and perseverance became the invisible threads binding them. When an unexpected complication arose, a secondary explosion simulation causing structural instability, Emily's quick thinking averted disaster. "Fall back and regroup," she commanded. "We adapt, or we fail." The team responded seamlessly, their training evident in every calculated move. Emily's leadership was the anchor in the storm, her voice steady amid the chaos. Hours later, as the sun dipped low, the mission neared completion. The disabled tanks were recovered, and the simulated casualties accounted for. The unit, battle-weary but triumphant, gathered at the extraction point. Around the campfire that night, fatigue mingled with a sense of accomplishment. Soldiers exchanged stories, their camaraderie strengthened by shared trials. Emily sat quietly, reflecting on the day's events, the trust earned, the prejudices overcome, the strength forged through unity. Lieutenant Harper approached, his expression one of respect and quiet pride. "You've done well, Dawson. The team trusts you, and that's what counts in the field." Emily nodded, the weight of leadership both familiar and daunting. The journey from underestimated recruit to trusted commander had been arduous, but it was far from over. As the stars emerged overhead, Emily allowed herself a moment of respite, knowing that greater challenges awaited. Yet, with her team by her side, she felt ready to face whatever lay ahead, united, resilient, and determined. The briefing room at Camp Valor was stark and utilitarian, its fluorescent lights casting a clinical glow over the assembled faces. Emily Dawson stood at attention, her petite frame now commanding respect rather than derision, as the commanding officer entered. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. This was more than just another assignment, it was a turning point. Colonel Mitchell's voice cut through the silence, steady and authoritative. "Private Dawson, your performance over the past months has been exemplary. You've demonstrated leadership, technical expertise, and resilience that exceed expectations. We are assigning you to lead an advanced armored rescue unit on a critical mission." Emily's eyes narrowed slightly, absorbing the weight of the responsibility. The mission was to infiltrate hostile territory where several armored vehicles had been disabled during a recent engagement. Recovery was paramount, not just for equipment, but for the lives of soldiers stranded behind enemy lines. As the briefing continued, details unfolded. The terrain was treacherous, enemy patrols active and vigilant. The success of this mission would depend on swift, decisive action and flawless coordination. After the meeting, Emily stood outside the room, the hum of activity around her fading into the background as she processed the gravity of what lay ahead. Her journey from underestimated recruit to respected leader had been arduous, marked by relentless training, personal sacrifice, and the constant battle against doubt, both external and internal. Her phone buzzed, a message from Lieutenant Harper, *, "You've earned this. Lead with courage." *, the simple words steadied her, a reminder of the support that had underpinned her rise. Later, standing before her assembled team, Emily addressed them with a confidence born of experience. "This mission will test us in ways we haven't faced before. But I believe in each of you, and in what we can accomplish together. We move at dawn." As night enveloped Camp Valor, Emily allowed herself a moment to reflect. The small, fragile girl once dismissed had transformed into a symbol of strength and determination. Her size no longer defined her, her spirit and skill did. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and challenge. But Emily Dawson was ready to lead, to fight, and to prove that the power within often lies unseen until the moment it is needed most.